What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix for Week 11 of the 2021 CFL season. I'm Ryan Coop here with your defensive preview this time around. If you missed it, go back and check out earlier today. I released my quarterback, running back, and wide receiver previews for this week, going through all the options at each position. And stay tuned on Friday and Saturday. I'll have depth chart updates out for this week's games to help you get set to finalize your fantasy lineups. Make sure you get players in there that are going to play and hopefully are going to produce big totals for you this week. Let's dive into the options on defense. And defense is a position where last week, if you put a defense in your lineup, you got very good point totals out of them, especially Toronto and Ottawa across the two games they each played, and the Bombers coming in solid once again this week. So here's how I see the options at defense for Week 11. Only 3 games on the schedule, so 6 defenses to choose from. Well, let's go high price to low price. Winnipeg Blue Bombers defense continues to be a work of art. I am continually amazed at the things this defense is able to do. They've averaged 13.4 fantasy points a game through 9 games. Last year, for comparison, I think the top defense in the league averaged 9.5, I want to say, or something around there. So almost 4 points more per game this defense is averaging. They come in at a 52.82 salary, 13.2 points. Would be 2.5 points per $1,000 you spend, which is what I consider full value. It'll help you get to a 100-point week. They face an Edmonton team that, besides Ottawa, has given up the second most points in the CFL Fantasy to defenses. So, Edmonton does not seem to put a ton of points on the board. The Bombers don't give up a ton of points. It's going to be Taylor Cornelius or Dakota Prukop starting at quarterback this week. And Cornelius, for example, has thrown a decent number of picks, and the Bombers have a ball-hawking defense. They can put up a lot of sacks, and I think the offensive line for Edmonton might be missing a couple pieces this week again as well. So I really like the Bombers defense. I know it's expensive and it's going to cost you, and it's going to be harder to fit in your lineup than one of these other ones. And there's always the concern, with a higher price is 13.2 is a pretty hard total for a defense to hit on any given week for sure. But they have hit that total in 3 games this year, and in 4 other games, they've hit just shy of that. Besides week 4 where they put up just 3 against Calgary, their lowest total on the year is 10. So it's pretty low, pretty high floor, and pretty high ceiling for Winnipeg with 2 of their last 3 games, especially against Edmonton, 23 and 20 points in those 2 games against Edmonton. So a great option there if you have the room for them. Getting into the next option, the Calgary Stampeders, 35.45 price point. I don't like Calgary's defense as an option particularly this week. They are starting to, I think, tighten things up perhaps a little bit on the defensive side of the ball, but they're not putting the fantasy points up. In their last 3 games, 4 points, 5 points, and 3 points. Back in week 6, they put up 12 against Edmonton, but other than that, 5 is their highest total on the year. BC doesn't give up a ton of points to defenses. I think they have a decent offensive line there, and Michael Riley doesn't throw a lot of picks, so I don't like Calgary to cover an 8.9 point week. I'm cautious on BC at 32.45. They come in at 8.1 is what you're looking for, and that is actually their average on the year, but they've declined a little bit in their last 3 games. 8 points against Montreal in week 7, 5 against the Riders in week 8, and 3 against Winnipeg in week number 9. So granted, those are 3 of the teams that are better in the league against defenses. They have some of the better offensive line play this year and more ball control. Whereas Calgary, we've seen what they did against Calgary in week 2, where they put up 15 points there. So I think BC is capable of putting big performances up, and especially if Levi Mitchell has not really gotten on his game the way we expect him to be this year for Calgary. I think there's some options there. I expect them to get a turnover or 2 maybe pick up a couple of sacks here. But the recent performances make me slightly skeptical. So I put them as a yellow light option. I think there's some other good options this week. Stay away from the Edmonton defense. Winnipeg does not give up sacks. They do not turn over the ball very often, maybe once a game. 2.6 points is all defenses are averaging against the Bombers this year, which is nuts. And the Edmonton defense themselves is only averaging 3 fantasy points a game. So in their past 3 games, including 2 against Winnipeg, they've had just a total of 2 points, not worth fantasy consideration for Edmonton's defense. And then 2 other options I really like. Montreal and Ottawa both had 3,200. Both you're looking for 8 points out of them. Let's touch on Montreal first of all. In 2 games against Ottawa already this year, they've put up full value in those. 13 points back in Week 5, 8 points in Week 10. In Week 9, they also put up 9 points. So in 3 of their last 5 games, they've hit full value. They also did have 2 games in the middle where they did not, where they put up just 2-point weeks. But besides that, most of this year, it seems Montreal has given good point totals. They're facing an Ottawa defense that gives up the most in the league to defenses. We've seen Caleb Evans throw his fair share of picks in the past couple of games. So I think there's some room to play there if you want to take Montreal's defense at 3,200. I also think there's some Ottawa's now a viable fantasy option. I said stay away from them for so long because they were only putting up games against Edmonton, 19 points in Week 1, 10 points in Week 9. In the 5 games between them against anyone else in the league, they put up a total of 3 points. But they are now at 3 straight games with over 10 points, or 10 or more, I guess. 10 against Edmonton Week 9, and then in their 2 games in Week 10, 10 and 13 points, including that 13 against Montreal. So I think it's no accident that with the return of Abdul Kanay and Sherrod Baltimore to that secondary, that's shored things up. The offense has gotten a little bit better for Ottawa, and they're playing a quarterback who doesn't have a ton of starting experience this week in Matt Schultz, who is definitely a different perspective than facing Vernon Adams Jr., so I really like actually Ottawa as an option on defense for this week. I think that could be a very fun fantasy play in that game. And kudos to the Red Blacks defense for turning things around after those tough weeks there in the middle of the season. So those are your fantasy options for this week on the defensive side of the ball. Winnipeg, Montreal, and Ottawa, I like all of them as options. In the middle on BC, and saying stay away from Calgary and Edmonton. Like I said at the start of the show, if you missed it, go back, check out all my other positional preview videos I released earlier today. Help get you set to lock in pieces at those positions. And stay tuned on Friday and Saturday. I'll have depth chart updates for all of the games to help get you set for locking things in for week number 11. Do all the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't. If you have any fantasy questions, put them in the comments section or tweet them at me at CooperTrooper42. Link to that's in the description. And if you want to play CFL Fantasy alongside myself and other viewers, check the video description. There's a link there to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix group over on the official CFL Fantasy site. You can play alongside myself and other viewers this week and every week throughout the 2021 CFL season. As always, thanks for watching. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.